So today we are joined by former UFC fighter turned Oktagon commentator and businessman, Luke Barnatt.
All good, Tyler. Thanks for having me, mate.
So you're managing the London team roster at the newly announced GFL MMA organisation. Tell us about how that came about and what your role as team manager will entail.
With GFL, it's kind of been in the works, I'd say, for 3 years. I've been in contact with Darren through the coach on my team, which is Carl Prince. Me and Carl Prince have been in business. He was my coach when I was fighting after my UFC time. And then we've been in various business things across the years. And we've been in MMA, you never know what's going to happen. But this GFL thing came up 3 years ago and we were in deep discussions about it. How can we can help? So it's been on the table for a very, very, very long time. And now it's all come to fruition and we have Team London and everything's going on. My role really is kind of as if I use the word steward, I don't know if it'd be right, but for this season, as we've seen, I don't know if you've seen Darren go on Errol Hawani's show and discuss it. The season is owned by the league. Okay, so what GFL is and what they're trying to achieve is they're trying to basically become the Premier League of mixed martial arts. Conceptually, I really like it. I think it's a fantastic idea. But to have a league like the Premier League, where you have different teams, normally the teams are owned by individual people. So they're not all owned by the league. And this is where a lot of people are getting confused. So I know I'm going a bit deep straight away, but just so people understand, normally each team is owned by different people and they hire a manager and they hire a coach. Nothing is done by the league. This season, because they're trying to get it off the ground, it's all owned by the league. So a lot of the decisions are being made by the league, which seems like a normal MMA promotion that's promoting fighters and promoting fights. That's not the idea. You have to have the vision of what they're trying to become. So they're trying to become, I use Premier League because obviously UK audience and all the rest of it. If you think of NBA, it's the same. So they're trying to have teams that are owned by other individuals that are trying to set them up and hire people. So this time I'm like a steward and I manage the team and I'm in contact with all the fighters, but all the fighters have their own individual managers, because before GFL was about, you'd hire a manager to get yourself on promotions. They all got on GFL by a manager putting them forward and all that sort of stuff. So my relationship is with the fighters and with the athletes as well as with their management team. And I help coordinate things and think of matchups. There was the beginning of GFL when they did the draw had very little input from me, a lot of input from Carl, but how they did the draw, we got all the Europeans. Because the league decided that we wanted to have the Europeans. When I say all, we didn't get all of them, but you know what I mean. So when you look at the teams, most of the fighters are where they belong because the league decided. Darren clarified that. But I did have say on certain things, and we're talking about trades and transfers and fighters changing weight classes and da. So I do have a lot of input, and I am in control of the team, but the team is owned by the league. Just to clarify that. Hopefully that makes sense, yeah?
And so, like you said, they want to become sort of the Premier League of mixed martial arts. What do you think they're doing, obviously besides that aspect, they're doing the sort of team roster? What do you think separates them apart from the rest of the MMA organisations where they can sort of break new ground?
Well, definitely breaking new ground with the time slot that they're talking about. The way they've explained it to me, and again, we're English, so it's a little bit different, but you have the football, the NFL in the States, and they have their off season. And I believe this season slots into their off season. And in America, it's like same as in England with football, it's like a religion to watch the NFL on a Sunday and a Monday. You have Monday night football. We have Monday night soccer, football, obviously, but you know what I mean, as well. And they're trying to go into that slot. So we're talking about having Sunday and Monday games. So Sunday and Monday fights rather than Saturday night, Friday night, promotion. They're talking about having multiple, again, I use the word games because that's kind of how they're looking at it. Multiple games that happen over a weekend period. So we will have 6 teams that compete over a weekend and we'll have 3 games. That's how the season will start. So on a Sunday, we'll have 2 games and on a Monday, we'll have 1 game. And a game will consist of 10 fights from each team.
Right.
So you have 10 fighters from Team London fighting 10 fighters from Team Dubai or wherever it is, and they compete. And however the victories are scored, we get points, and they go towards our team. They explain the points. I'll quickly explain it because the audience probably don't know, but they did it at the draft. And let me get it right. For a win and a finish, you get 4 points for your team. So if you're a fighter who competes, you get 4 points for your team. If you knock the person out, submit them, or get a referee stoppage. If you win by decision, you get 3 points for the team. If for some reason you draw, which is very rare in MMA, you get 2 points, but it gets allocated to both sides, right?
Right.
If you lose by decision, you get 1 point. So what you got to think about, a knockout is worth 4 points, whereas the decision victory is really only worth 2 points because the other team get 1 point for a decision loss as well. So you're getting double your double bubble, I guess you'd say, for getting a knockout. So finishes are very, very, very well rewarded for the team. And from those 10 matches or fights or games, or however you want to use it, those 10 fights can give you a maximum of 40 points. So each game, we as a team can get 40 points. And there'll be 6 games across the regular season. My maths isn't that good, so please don't test me at 6 times 40. So no, I'm joking. So you get 240 points maximum across the season. So if you got a perfect season, you score 240 points. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But that's kind of the setup they have. It's completely different to anything we've ever seen in mixed martial arts. Conceptually, I think it's really, really cool. The way they've executed it so far, maybe I wouldn't agree with on a few decisions they've made. But those decisions that they've made have also made everyone talk about it. And that's the reason I'm on this call. So who's right and who's wrong, who knows? We're going to find out, but I think it's a very exciting time. If you love fights and you love mixed martial arts, more the merrier, or whatever the phrase is. More fights is better. Imagine Sunday night fights, Sunday day fights, Monday night fights. So you can watch Friday night, it used to be Bellator, but I think that's gone now. So PFL, Saturday UFC, Sunday GFL, Monday GFL. You got a full weekend of fights. So one of the big mistakes and misunderstandings I've seen is people are talking about comparing it to UFC and competing with you. There's no competition on any level in my eyes with the UFC.
Yeah.
Maybe in the marketplace for fighters when it comes to money in the future, maybe. But as it stands, it is not a compare in any way to the UFC. It's a completely different concept, completely different idea. There's loads of good about it. There's loads of people talking bad about it. We're just going to have to wait and see how the season goes.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. And you mentioned there's some things you might have done differently. What were those things you were thinking of?
I mean, AI would be one. You mentioned other businesses before. I'm deep and heavy in the AI space, and I see some of the quality of the AI that can be produced.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best.
Are you talking about the Gladiator promos?
The promo video with the gladiators wasn't my favorite, but I also liked it because at least it shows that they're forward thinking. You know, introducing the league with something like AI makes you understand that they want to do new revolutionary things that are cutting edge. You know, again, the execution wasn't perfect, but I think the idea behind it was great. And that's why I think a lot of people, again, they've decided to make this big splash and to recruit all these massive names and to do it that way. So they're going to get the flack for it, you know, from people, from the haters, because that's what happens all the time. But I think it's the first time they've ever done it, the first event, the first live broadcast, the first whatever. So they're like almost running before they walk in a way. But that's what they've decided to do. So you've got to back it. And I think shows balls to come out here and to try and do something different and to try and do it in a big way. But I probably would have just got a better AI generator to do it.
Well, like you said, it did get a lot of people talking. And I mean, I think everybody in the MMA community was seeing those promos. So, I mean, it worked to a degree. And like we said, you're going to have a say in the matchmaking of the GFL matchups. What are some of the matchups you're most excited to see?
I'm already matching the first game, and I can't give away any of it, obviously. The teams, and I said I'm very tired. I've been working very, very hard, and I know you want me to slip up and say some names. I'm very excited about certain fighters that I have on my team. You know, Josephine Knutson is a young girl that had a chance in the UFC, and not many people know, but I understand the talent that she has. I have a very good relationship with her team and everyone out there. And I think what I love about GFL and the way they've executed it is someone like her gets to compete against names like Paige Van Zandt that everyone knows. That would never happen in the other roster because they protect their stars, obviously. But in this league format, it's still definitely not going to happen, but it's more likely to happen. So you're more likely to see those matchups of the young gun that people don't really know against the legend, and or the old legends fighting each other. Obviously, I've got a heavyweight called Stuart Austin who was with us at Oktagon MMA. Well, we were talking the other day, and he could fight JDS. He could fight Frank Mir. He could fight these huge names that you would never get an opportunity to fight, and he could fight 3 of them in 6 months. So you could see a guy who's, in his prime physically, because Stuart's pretty young, as a heavyweight, fight some huge names and knock them out and finish them and get big wins and be revolutionary for these people's careers. So, we've got a mixed bag. And when you look at the teams, we're probably one of the younger teams, which is great. And I've said this within my team, and I'll say it publicly. I think we are the strongest or second strongest ability of a team that we have, skill set. So I'm very, very fortunate. Commercially, we're probably one of the weaker teams, which is what we're used to being in European MMA. Because European MMA is commercially nothing like American MMA or Brazilian MMA, because they've been doing it for a lot longer. So when it comes to commercial revenues and money, and I think it's going to be tough for us. But when it comes to winning fights, I honestly think we should be the favorite going into the competition. When you look at the teams, I think our oldest athlete is 38 years old, and the oldest athlete in GFL is 47, I think, or 46 or something crazy like that. And I think the athlete is Alexander Gustafsson, who's 38. So
that's not a bad 38-year-old to have, is it?
Exactly, not a bad 38-year-old to have. Talking about matchups for him, he could fight Shogun, he could fight Rashad Evans, he could fight Thiago Santos. There's big fights, you know what I mean? There's not little fights. Gegard Mousasi, for me, is not just an incredible athlete, an incredible fighter, but just a great guy. I've known him on and off for a bit through my years in UFC, not super well, but well enough. And I've always had huge respect for him. And the problem with Gegard is he's beaten everyone already. So with the fights that are looking to line up, it's more like they're going to try and have revenge on Gegard than he's going to gain much from it. Yeah. But at least we go into those matchups psychologically knowing Gegard's already beat this guy. He's better than them. He could fight a heavyweight. He could fight. He doesn't matter for Gegard, So very fortunate to have him. And again, I think Gegard's 37. I don't want to mess. I might get it wrong, or 36. Like, he's young compared to, for a legend who's been doing it forever. So we got some very, very, very talented people. Brett Johns, for me, is probably one of the best, if not the best athlete in his weight class that he's going to compete in. Very excited, happy to have him. Great guy to work with. Great. So there's some. We got some great fighters. So I'm very, very excited for us all to be together for the first time in April, with all the teams, because remember, all the teams are going to compete over the same weekend. So there's 10 fights. So we bring 10 fighters from our team, Team Sao Paulo 10, Team New York, Team LA, Team Dubai, and what one did I miss? Team Miami, all come together. So we're going to have 60 athletes. You got to think that's like 3 times the size of a UFC group of competitors, plus the team managers, plus the coaches. And amongst those 60, 80 people, there's so many legends, so many great people. I think it's going to be a real circus event for the weekend. It's going to be so much fun and great to be a part of. So I'm super, super excited for it.
Yeah, and the roster that everybody's sort of acquired is pretty fantastic around the board. I think we've just recently seen Luke Rockhold has been transferred over to a different team, and it looks like that's to specifically make Weidman Rockhold 2, which would be a great rematch. If you could draft anybody in, you've already got a great team, but if you could draft anybody in, who are you drafting in?
That's a good question. I should have more extensive knowledge. The thing is, I'm so competitive. So my heart with the names and the name value, I don't care about the name value. I care about the man that they are right now and how they'll do in the competition. having said that, Yoel Romero is an incredible human being and an incredible fighter, and having him that would be amazing. Like, so that would be the guy that said everything I just said, I'm gonna throw it off the table, and that's the first name that came to my head, just because he's so much fun. But I think it's a good question. I'd have to think about it more. I did say before the call that I'm a bit tired and I've been so focused on other things this week. But Luke Rockhold trade, that's another thing the league is going to do. As you can see with this trade, they've spoken to me about trading a few people. And I'm like, I don't want that guy, even though if he's commercially great for us, I'm not. So you'll get to see that. And they're doing that for the fans. Like you said, Weidman, Rockhold would be a great matchup. There'll be a lot of matchups that happen like that they trade. I just hope they don't take any of my guys. But we'll see. I'm trying to think. I'm really am trying to think. But I think I'm going to stick with Yoel Romero at the moment. If we could have him, that would just be, for me personally. I'm just talking about me, not the team, just me personally.
Yeah.
He's such a cool guy, and you could make so many moments.
That would be amazing.
What about you? Who would you want to see on Team London?
Honestly, I would probably say Romero myself. Obviously, he's kind of getting on a bit. He's still been fighting. He's been doing some bare knuckle recently, so he's still got that knockout power. But he was back in his UFC days. He was one of the most exciting guys to watch on the mic, in the cage. So I'd pick Romero too.
No, there you go. Yeah. So I just think, like the entertainment value is what I would enjoy, and just have like the energy in the locker room and the energy as part of your team. I think is very, very important. And I think one of the thing that people underestimate about fighting in general is how wise fighting makes people. Like the ups and downs and the tribulations you go through and the lifestyle that you have to lead, and having a guy later on in his years like Yoel who's been through everything. Really, even going back to his Olympic days, wrestling, and the amount of stories. I'm sure around the dinner table when he's talking, he has crazy stories about loads of different things, and that can inspire your younger, hungrier athletes that, again, in my opinion, are the most valuable. They're the ones that are going to get the points because, again, Yoel's getting on. He's a bit. So if Yoel, his fighting ability and what he does in the cage isn't as important as how he inspires the other people around him. And that goes the same on my team for people like Alex and people like Gegard. I see them almost as like team captains that you can get them to help the younger guys. And you got to think, I mentioned earlier about Stuart Austin fighting Junior Dos Santos or someone like that. Sounds great, but you might have him on a pedestal and not understand how to deal with fighting a legend and all those experience. But if you have a guy like Alex or Gegard come by who's fought the best of the best of the best and talk to you, it could really, really, really be effective. So I think introducing those sort of dynamics into a team outside of fighting, since I stopped fighting, I got involved in like community building. I run an online community, a massive one. And I think I'm being very, very underestimated as a team manager because you have more name value, or definitely on some of the other teams. But I am deep in like 3D chess when it comes to understanding emotions and people and how to manage. Well, that's what I've been doing for many years. So I think this job is so well suited to me. And I think, I think Carl as well, a bit of an unknown quantity compared to some of the other guys. And me and him have such great, synergy and known each other for such a long time. I think that as long as we get to make enough decisions and the league don't take too much control, I honestly think we can wipe the floor with these teams.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Can't wait to see the matchups and how it's all going to pan out. But it's, like you said, more the merrier. It's great to have another organisation there competing, giving the fighters opportunities. So, yeah, it's going to be great to watch. So we're going to take it back some years. You're on The Ultimate Fighter season 17, which in my opinion, one of the best the series ever had. Was such a great competition. Coach Chael and Coach Jones was just fantastic. You made it to the latter stages of the competition. Just tell us a bit about that experience.
The best season, not one of the best, best season of the Ultimate Fighter, without a doubt. And I would put that mainly down to Chael and his mentorship. And that's been proven. Now we see Chow, who's going to be coaching the next season, I believe, against Daniel Cormier. I think that'll be 3 times because he did it against Vanderlei as well.
Yeah.
I can't think of another guy that's done it 3 times. There might be, but I can't think of one. So that sets a record for Chael, the bad guy. You've thrown it back. I mean, I think it's 11 years, 12 years, maybe since it happened. It was a life converting experience in so many different ways, because before I went on the Ultimate Fighter, I was sleeping in my gym on the floor to have the ability to be able to train as much as I could train, and I didn't have a job. And thanks to Nigel Burgess and the guys at Tsunami Gym who helped me back then, I managed to get the opportunity to have a friend of mine pay for my flights to Vegas to get on that show. And then I went to living in a mansion with 14 fighters and being trained by Chael Sonnen in Las Vegas. It was a very, very transformative experience for me. So a lot happened in a very, very, very short amount of time. I think that's probably the most my life has changed in an 8-week period, because it's 8 weeks that you're stuck in this house. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs about myself and about my ability that I overcame in that experience. And I became very, very close to a lot of the athletes there. Kelvin Gastelum, one of them. A guy called Jimmy Quinlan, who another one. I went to his wedding in Boston. A great guy. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. Those are, again, it's 10, 11 years ago, and my life has just moved at such a rapid pace. But those experiences, they really do mold and shape you. And the one thing I always will say about that experience is a lot of people have like people they look up to, heroes, and I never really put anyone on a pedestal in my whole life. My dad taught me that from a young age, because my dad was a photographer for rock stars, so he used to like meet like the huge names, and he would say they're just people, they're just people, they're just people. So I'm not that guy who like fanboys or cares about anybody, but I knew every single word that Chael Sonnen had ever spoken in an interview, because I thought he was hilarious. So when I got to be on his team and to be his number one pick, it was a huge moment for me. And we became pretty good friends, still are friends, talk to this day. And that for me was massive. And when they say never meet your heroes or never meet the people, like, it's happened to me where I've met other people and they've not lived up to the hype. But with Chael, he like went past the hype. He's such a good person and so helpful, and mentored me in so many different ways. So like fighting, great. I trained with him for 6 months after the thing, and lived in Oregon and spent some time with him. But even when it comes to now public speaking, doing interviews, talking, having confidence in different situations, like loads and loads of things that I've taken from him that he probably doesn't even realize or know about. So that he had the biggest impact on me in the Ultimate Fighter a long time ago. And when I look back at it, they're the points that I take away from it. The relationships that I built, relationship with Dana, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about the Ultimate Fighter as well. Or in the old days, I don't know how it is now. I feel like the UFC is completely different now compared to when I was in it. Because I feel like for Dana, it was an extreme passion project. And I think he still is passionate about it now, but I think then was just different since they sold and everything else. He was there every day. So Dana was in the Ultimate Fighter. Like for all the fights, he was there. He gave everyone who was on that TV show, because it was one of the better shows, he gave everyone his personal phone number. Everyone who competed, you said I made it to the latter stages. I had 3 fights in the Ultimate Fighter. I won the first, won the second, and I lost the third, I think, against a guy called Dylan Andrews, which was fight of the season, in an epic fight that I lost only because I didn't believe in myself, because Dylan Andrews was in his early 30s. I was 25. I was 5-0 going into the show. I think he had 20 plus fights, and I went in like in the wrong mindset. I didn't have my team around me, the John Maguires and the Jack Masons and the people that were always with me. So I kind of beat myself before I got in there, and then fought the hardest 3 rounds of my life and got beat by a body shot. Oh, it was horrible. But yeah, so I had those 3 fights. But this was I don't know if it's the only season, but one of the only seasons where Dana came in afterwards and said, listen, you guys have been amazing. The show's been amazing. I know it's going to smash it. Everyone gets to fight in the finale. So we all got our shot to get an opportunity to fight in the UFC, because the level of competition was so high. I also think because they needed another injection of middleweights in the UFC, a bit more hype, but that's a tactical decision. I'll take that he thought we were good. So we end up getting our shot, and that's when I went out to train Chael. I had a real hard fight against Colin Hart, and I beat him by decision. But yeah, so the relationship with Dana, it builds that because you get to speak to him. Most fighters never even see him or talk to him. You get to speak to him a lot. You know, we had a crazy night in Vegas after the show. Can't really talk about that, but it was a good time. So that's one of the relationships that I built from that is what I've taken forward, basically.
Yes, and like you said, the UFC's probably changed a lot since back when you were in it yourself. But there's you actually have a common opponent with Sean Strickland, who fought just for the belt recently. What do you make of his last title fight? And did you think when you fought him back in your early days of both of your careers that he would go on to have the potential that he did?
I mean, I think he dropped down to welterweight after fighting me because I think he knew he lost. He got the decision victory, but he knew he lost, so he changed weight class. Very close fight, yeah. Very close. Dana White tweeted afterwards that I won, so let's say that I won, but it's fine. Yeah. I tell people that I won, even though I didn't. I lost by decision, and is what it is. I mean, he developed massively. I've trained with him since, spent time with him since in Vegas. But that should, like, again, going back to my life, I think everything always works out for a reason. But I left the UFC when I was 28, I think. And my team were fantastic and amazing. And without them, I wouldn't have got anywhere. But they weren't the most experienced when it came to competing at the highest level in the world. And when I left at 28, I thought my career was over. I thought I was old. I thought I was done. I thought, so I carried on fighting for a lot longer, but with a lot less in it, a lot less passion. I wasn't as driven. I won 4 fights, I think, off when I came out. I fought in Italy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't double down on my career, and I didn't really put more effort in. I put less. I moved to Spain, beautiful place, bit calm, started my own gym, didn't have the training partners, didn't have the coaches, and I went on to fight. And then I ended up meeting Carl Prince in Australia when I was competing for another event. And then I had a real coach again, but I'd had a big gap. I'm going to get to the point of my story, don't worry. So if I'd have known at 28 that it's been... Yeah, in 8 years, 7 years, that Sean Strickland would be fighting for a middleweight title. That's what it took. That's the difference. So my life changed, and I went off in a different path. I got married, I had kids, I started businesses. Strickland doubled down on the gym, trained like a madman, and became the level to be able to compete for a world title. I know in my heart that I could have done the same. I didn't, and I'm not talking any bullshit, like I should have or could have or would have or anything like that. I'm just saying, if I doubled down, then I believe I would have fought for a world title and possibly won a world title, especially with my frame and everything else. Strickland, I've trained with him since, and he is a specimen, a physical specimen, never gets tired, pushes the pace, is in, like, I went up a weight class, I was heavier, and he just puts the pressure on you, and he's tough work. But he doubled down, and I didn't double down. So after I beat him in Germany, in Berlin, I never would have thought Sean Strickland would fight for a world title. Never. Yeah. Like, he was not, we had a very close fight, but he was nowhere near the level. And like I said, he dropped down to welterweight because he understood that I'm a big human being, and whatever reason I haven't spoken to him about it, but for whatever reason he gave, that's why he dropped down. So for him to then grind and go through hell and get to the level he's at now, you have to respect it, because, I understand what it takes to get to the level that I got to. If you double down on that, you get to the level that he got to. And yeah, he's given up his entire life for it, and he deserves everything that he's got. His social media side and interview style and everything else, I mean, we can comment differently, but he's doing all right. He's doing all right. And I didn't actually see the fight on Saturday. I didn't sleep Saturday because I was up on my computer creating an automated system for my business, which is boring and rubbish. So I didn't get to see the fight, but I saw a few bits online. For me, it's going to sound bad, but since Israel Adesanya lost the title, I was a huge Adesanya fan, love watching his fight, watching his style. However you talk about it, with DDP as a champ, I don't care. I'm not interested. It was my weight class. The guy I used to fight was fighting him. I'm not going to watch it. I'll watch the highlights. It has no draw for me, no interest for me. I was kind of hoping that Strickland would do it, because then I could say that I beat a world champion, even though I didn't beat him. But yeah, it didn't work out. But yeah, it was. I'm sure he'll recover and everything will be good.
Yes, definitely. And talking about sort of common previous opponents as well, someone who also comes with a bit of controversy. Andrew Tate is a good friend of yours, somebody who you fought back in the early career as well. Tell us about how that friendship formed.
Oof, okay, going a different angle. He was my second ever fight as an amateur. So he dipped his toe in amateur mixed martial arts. I think he had a couple of after he fought me, he had a couple of pros, but nothing of any real value in the mixed martial arts world. But kickboxing obviously did his thing and became world champion, I think, multiple times. When we fought is the only time I missed weight, and he couldn't care less, and he beat me anyway. I believe he was a British kickboxing champion at the time. We watched the fight back together on his podcast on a live stream and watched it, and we agree that it was a draw. You see how I'm like, all of my losses, I'm just kind of bringing back.
We need to get these decisions overturned.
Exactly. I need to speak to Tapology. Anyway, so yeah. So we fought, and then he became one of my training partners, him and his brother. And I used to travel down, and he used to travel up to me in Cambridge at Tsunami. Anytime I was fighting anyone who was a striker, we'd try and get together. I used to go down to Jimmy Manua's place, Lion's Den, I think it was called, and train with Jimmy, and Andrew would be there, and we just love fighting, so we'd just train together. So that was how it all kind of started. And then I moved to California to pursue my UFC thing, and he moved to Romania to pursue his thing. Social media wasn't such a big thing. And then 5 or 6 years later, I can't remember, after the UFC, after Venator, I ended up taking a last-minute fight on 2 weeks' notice in Romania against the light heavyweight guy. The first time I ever fought a light heavyweight. Like I said, 2 weeks' notice. Needed the money, wanted some cash. I think they paid me $5,000. So I was like, it's Christmas, I got to feed the family. I'll go and make a little bit of cash. And I beat up some, I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, Matria or something. Nice guy, really nice guy. I can't remember his name, but I knocked him out in the first round. And the commentators for the event was Andrew and Tristan. So when I knocked them out, these two big guys stood up going, whoa, da, 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 da. And I looked over and I was like, oh, it's you guys. So they took me out. I got very, very drunk. And anyone who's ever tried to keep up with Tristan drinking always loses, especially after a weight cut, especially after a fight. And he ended up carrying me to bed, which was quite embarrassing. And he still brings that up to this day. And yeah, so then that friendship started. And that was, again, a long time ago. I can't remember how long ago, but they were filming a YouTube channel called The Hateful Tates, which is way before what they are now, like way, way, way before. They had some guy following around with a camera, and I thought they were losers and weirdos. Having some guy record them going out and partying, I thought it was so bizarre. And they go, no, we're doing this YouTube thing. And this was before anyone even really knew what YouTube was and streaming and da, 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 da. So, okay, cool. Then I went off, and to be honest, didn't have that much contact, tweeted a bit, I think, back and forth on Instagram. And then Andrew and Tristan were in Marbella, which is where I live now, doing a car rally about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I can't remember. And we bumped into each other in a pool party and just got chatting. And I was at the point in my life where fighting had served its purpose and I had done okay. Got to the UFC, got some great stories, lived a great life, but didn't have the passion for it anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And Andrew had obviously done pretty well at this point, nothing compared to what he's like now. And he was giving me some life advice, if you want to call it that. And he told me to join something called the War Room, which is an online community. And I joined it because I wanted to learn about cryptocurrencies. And this, again, 6 years ago or 7 years, I can't remember the dates. I'm terrible with dates. And speak to his cousin, because his cousin knows all about this sort of stuff and will help you out and da, 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 da. So I joined the War Room, and that's when I'd probably say the second most transformative part of my life ever started. The first was, like I said, the Ultimate Fighter. Well, not the first, but the first big one we spoke about was the Ultimate Fighter. And then from this moment onwards, from that discussion, it was like a 3-hour chat with Andrew about life and where I'm going and what I'm doing as a fighter, a former fighter, as you know, and everyone probably knows, most people that even compete in the UFC at my level, I had 6 fights in the UFC plus 3 on the Ultimate Fighter. I don't make life-changing money. I make money, but it's not like other sports. So most people become drug addicts, alcoholics, gambling addicts, or PTs. I'm sorry to put PTs in the same bracket as those things, but that's normally what happens. Or they own a gym, or they do whatever, right? And they struggle through life, and they have a bit of hatred in their heart because they believe they deserved more. The UFC should have done better. Dana should have done it, and all this sort of stuff, rather than recreating themselves and becoming a new man and doing something different, which is what I have done and what I continue to do. And as what I said about Chael, never meet your heroes. I mean, Andrew was never my hero at that point, but yeah, I know he's the hero for a lot of young men. Like Andrew is the same, like gone above and beyond for me as an individual and a lot of people that I know. And I had a transformative experience with Inside the War Room that made me realize my value as an individual and the lessons I've learned and the life that I've led, and introduced me to people in so many different industries, doing so many different things. Because again, singular focused person, fighting. Now I'm singular focused on making money, and life's gone well, because of my connections and because of whatever. But that's all down to Andrew and that one random conversation that we had. So when you talk about our relationship and how we met, that's kind of it's a long story, but it's a short version of what happened.
And so someone who knows him very well personally, what do you make of the controversies that surround him over the recent years?
I think the UK is, because again, I've not lived in the UK for 12 or 13 years, and the UK is the biggest. I mean, my cousin's a teacher, and I think in schools you can't even say his name, like his band, and there's government funding about rework. It's insanity. It is insanity. And I think if anyone has a brain and they look at the content or whatever you want to talk about, I've never understood why it is possible for someone who is a kickboxer who decided to make a YouTube channel and share his opinions on the world can have such controversy. I just don't understand it. If you don't like what he says, just turn it off. You don't have to listen. He's indoctrinating the younger generation and da. There is a reason why the younger generation are moving towards Andrew. And it's not Andrew. If it wasn't Andrew, it'd be someone else. The masculinity in the younger generations is fading away. It is being pushed away, and they are searching for somebody. I think, I'm talking from my own life experience, that's what I was searching for when I joined a fight gym, and I think that's where everything Andrew does comes from, that mentality of being a young kid, being lost in the world and not knowing what to do, and finding someone who can teach you. That's what it was like for me when I joined Tsunami. Jack Mason was the guy who I looked up to, was a masculine guy that I thought, I want to be just like Jack. I'll start fighting. And then all these lessons that you learn on the mats and lessons that you learn from fighting and competing, he has just done that on a much broader spectrum. And just like GFL had tried to make a splash by hiring or recruiting, or whatever you want to call it, all of these old legends, and made like a media splash and done some AI thing and da. Everyone's talking about GFL. Andrew just worked out, if I say certain words, I get a certain reaction, and that certain reaction made him the most Googled man in the world. So again, if you have 2 cents and you think about things, sounds pretty good to me, becoming the most Googled man in the world and now living the lifestyle that he lives and da. He's so much cleverer than people give him credit. People don't understand because they see such a small part of who he is. He is the hardest working man I've ever met, and he's one of the most intelligent men I've ever met. And he has utilized social media to the biggest extent you could imagine. And I think there is so many lessons that could be learned from him. But you guys in the UK are just clouded. Your judgment is clouded by mainstream media and clouded by these stupid accusations. We all know it's garbage. Most people know it's garbage. Like you have, I don't want to make it political, but you have the left wing people that just start rhetoric, all of these, saying what happened with Trump. Look at Trump. Look what Trump has done for not just America, but the world in such a short amount of time. If you're looking at it economically and you're not getting up and twisted by everything else, like if you just think about what he has managed to achieve in 3 weeks or whatever, I don't know how long it's been now, January 20th. So yeah, 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, he's had the most impact on the world ever. But then we look at the Labour Party and what Keir Starmer has done. He's been in for 7 months and it's been the complete opposite. So they're attacking the people who are making a difference to the younger generations and making a difference to the world. And Andrew is one of those people. And I think anyone who believes the garbage they say about him, they're just brain dead, to be honest. And they're drones that are controlled by whatever they see on TV. Anyone who has met the guy and sat down with him has felt good about the experience that they have had. I don't know, so much any other way. So I think so obviously there's some things that he said, there's some things that he's done that you could judge or you could do whatever, but we all have past, we all have things we've done. I just think it's crazy to have the reaction that they have about a kickboxer who made a YouTube channel. That is what Andrew is. And Andrew will say that himself. That's not me talking about him. He is a kickboxer that made a YouTube channel and people are getting their panties in a twist about his opinions.
So you credit him with really helping you transition from the end of your MMA career into now sort of your business world. What are some of those ventures that you're excited about? And you said you've been working on some projects this week.
Again, I when I said Andrew and the War Room. Like the War Room for me, which is his online membership, the individuals that I've met across every single walk of life have educated me, because I remember the first event I went to with these people, there was about 25 people there, and I'm just an old cage fighter who doesn't know nothing about the world. And I'm sitting there and they start talking about funnels. Okay. And I was like, what's a funnel? And they're talking about sales funnels, right, for online information products. I know nothing. And I'm just like this dumb guy who's sitting there going, can you explain it to me? And they're almost laughing at me, but obviously they can't laugh at me because I'm 6'6" and a cage fighter. But in their mind, they're like, this guy's dumb. And they tell me step by step all these processes and understanding and all of these inputs from so many different people that I've met through the War Room have just changed my life completely. But Andrew put me on the path. It's like a coach in fighting. They put you on the path. You still got to do the work. You still got to wake up. You still got to push yourself. You still got to train. You still got to learn. You still got to do whatever. Andrew was that guy for me, and I had so many different influences. When it comes to business ventures right now, I'm sitting in one of them. I have a studio in Marbella. It is a hybrid of like a podcast studio that we rent out to other individuals that are in Marbella. Obviously a big influencer community here. So we have the podcast studio, but it's also, I believe, the only private members club for content creators. So if you're a content creator of any type, you do VSLs, you have online courses, you have a community, you can become a yearly member at the club and you get access to the studio. We do events. We have like co-working spaces, a cafe, all that sort of stuff here in Marbella in a beautiful spot in the center of Port Banús. So that's what I'm pouring a lot of energy into right now. That's pretty big and fun. But that's like a brick and mortar solid business, my online business that I'm launching, it's one of the tactics that I've used over the last 5 years to make money. That has probably been the most consistent, is probably the word that I would use to make me money, consistently making me money without really doing any work. I can't go into the details, but it's like, once you set up this system and you do it, you have to put a bit of money into it. Then you have to do nothing because it all runs automated through my contacts that I've built up with Andrew and the guys and everyone that I've met and known. That's what I was doing Saturday night, building an automated system on and coming up with ideas. And that's why I didn't sleep for probably the last 72 hours, but I'm here and I'm alive. And then that will launch this week. So if you follow me on socials, you'll see what it is and you'll have a bit more information about it. But I can't really talk about it now. That's one of them. And then the big one this week as well that we have on Thursday, I have an event. I've become a producer for a film that we're going to make in Marbella. So I got in touch with a director from New York, and they had a script about a movie that was a young, rich New Yorker moved to California and fell in love with a girl, and then it kind of turns dark and it ends up being like a thriller. and I read the script and I was like, we should change California to Marbella. And we had this whole change of the script. And yeah, I got involved with this project. So now we have a rich New York kid coming to Marbella to house sit for his uncle, goes to a party, meets a pretty girl, falls in love with her. Everyone tells him to stay away from her. And then it gets a bit dark and crazy. So we're launching that Thursday, having a pre-party launch that will go into casting and everything else March, April, and then we start shooting in the summer. So I'll be producing a film out of my studio in Marbella project, which is a big one that I'm very, very happy about. And then off the back of that, I'm looking at opening a soundstage, is what they call it, which is basically where you make movies. In Marbella, there's an 18,000 square meter studio close to where this studio is, that I'm looking to buy and purchase and refurbish and turn into a soundstage to create more movies. All kind of depends on the success of this film and this shooting. The whole project, just to give it some gravitas, is backed by a movie producer called Lee Kaplan, who produced Ali, the film. Yep. So, he also did, I can't remember the detective program in the States, like True Detectives. He was that made that, and the team from that is who I'm involved with for this film. So it's like a real Hollywood production. So it should be pretty big. I won't be on camera in any way. I'll just be behind the camera and get a little credit, but it should be a fun project to be involved with.
Expecting a little henchman cameo or something.
I was trying, there's one scene, and I was trying to get a couple of UFC guys involved, but it's not I was trying to get Tom Aspinall to be in this thing, because I believe he'll be the new heavyweight champion of the world very, very soon, and it would be pretty cool to have the heavyweight champion in your movie. But the role that he plays probably wouldn't favor him marketing wise. So it didn't work out, but yeah, casting's going to be in February, March, April. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'll try and definitely get a few people involved. If there is a big, ugly doorman or something like that, then maybe I'll play that part. But I don't think my acting skills are up to par to be involved. So yeah, I have that. I mentioned the War Room, obviously, and now I have multiple businesses on the side with Andrew and with the team and doing things for him. I do a bit of merchandise and a bit of other stuff as well. And that's my day-to-day job, basically. I run my own YouTube channel, and I am heavily involved in a few crypto projects as well, which one day the bull run will come and we'll all be rich, and then we can all, enjoy life. We've been waiting for it, but Trump has saved the day, I believe, and Trump fever is going to make us all very, very wealthy, and everyone's going to have a good time. And then obviously I have GFL it starts in April, and don't forget I commentate for Oktagon, which they're doing 16 shows this year. By far the biggest MMA event in Europe. I know it didn't really kind of work out in England and the UK. We have Sam Creasy competing in a couple of weeks in Trinec, I want to say. It's in the Czech Republic. So yeah, I do that alongside Brian Lacey. We've been working together in comms for a long time. Love that job. That's like a passion of mine. I will never give that up. My dream would have been to do it for the UFC. I asked Dana a couple of times, especially when Dan Hardy quit or got fired or whatever happened there. It didn't happen. Now he's got multiple UFC champions commentating, so I don't think I have that opportunity. And I think that's it. There might be something else, but that'll do for today. So yeah, but Oktagon's a big part of my calendar. The guys over there, obviously it's about MMA really, this podcast, or this interview. Andre Novotny and Pavel Neruda. If you haven't watched Oktagon, you don't know what you're missing. It is by far the biggest event we've ever seen in Europe. And I always say this on interviews. I've only seen 2 MMA events that actually make money. And that is Oktagon and that is the UFC. Because every other event is propped up by fake money. So I don't know how PFL are getting their money. I haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue how Bellator were getting their money. It's all just Fugazi. I don't know, and eventually there's no sustainability and it all falls apart. Oktagon are built up sustainably by 2 very, very clever entrepreneurs who have pushed it in the Czech Republic. And it has grown into something now. And some people talk about the level of fighting. And if you go back a year, maybe 2 years, it was kind of like Czech Republic level and a bit low skill set. But if you look at it now, some of the fighters in Oktagon, some of the champions, some of the matchups we have, the Tipsport Game Changer, which is a middleweight tournament of 16 fighters that happens all year to find the number one guy, the level's great. The fights are great. And the events are way better than any other MMA promotion you've ever been to, especially the outdoor events that they do in the summer. There's one in Eden, which is going to be in the Czech Republic in Prague. It's Carlos Amola against Attila Vey, which is the main event, because they're kind of like the Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner of the UFC. They're the two legends that built the promotion, and they have done a good job of building talent around it. They're having their third fight in an outdoor arena, which will be 25,000 people sold out. Last year in Germany, we sold out 60,000 people in Frankfurt, which was a world record. So obviously I have a lot of love for Oktagon as well.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of their recent events, and the production value and everything is absolutely fantastic. And it really does seem like it's the fastest growing MMA promotion around at the moment. And they're doing great things in the European scene. Obviously, you said you're very closely working with Oktagon. Who are some of the best prospects they've got that you think people in the community should be keeping their eyes on?
Obviously, Shamrock.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know Shamrock, he's fun as well. So he's not just, the fighting ability is great. I've trained with Shamrock and he's a monster, like technically incredible. Just think he's got a huge fight that's just been announced. He announced it on Monday. I'm going to mess up the name, but Lom Ali Eskiev. He's going to fight, and Lom Ali is very, very, very tough. I think he's 23-7 is his record. He's like that short kind of Chechnyan build wrestler, but also has hands, is explosive and powerful. He had a bit of a bad fight in his last fight. He just fought a few weeks ago, and he kind of fell off a little bit. I was not very impressed, but he had a last-minute replacement, and I feel like that affected him. He also has a burger joint, like a burger joint, I guess you'd call it. It was Dusseldorf. I was in Dusseldorf. He has a burger joint there called something Bull Burgers or Toro Bull or something. The Bull Burger, I can't remember. I went there and it was awesome. But anyway, back to the point. Shamrock is definitely one to watch, not just from a talent's perspective, but also from a commercial perspective. He's got a great story. I interviewed him on my podcast and learned everything about it. It's a crazy story. I'm sure you know it. Yeah. And he's a real character, and people have been saying he's going to go to the UFC and all the rest of it. Maybe he will. I hope he doesn't, because I think at Oktagon, he has something special. I think Oktagon is very, very special, and I think we need characters like him. So he would be one, especially for the British fans. Someone that he wants to fight as well is the Black Panther, Losen Keita, who is, I've also trained with him, funny enough, and is one of the fastest strikers I've ever seen live. And I've seen a lot of fights now. I must have seen, thousands live cage side as a commentator. There's no one I've seen yet like Keita. He has this presence when he gets in the Oktagon cage and he steps forward, and he just has this thing about him, aura or whatever you want to call it. What did I can't remember his name. He said something about Yuri Prokacha. He said he's a shaman. Or no, he said about Poatan.
Yuri was talking about Poatan, yeah.
Yeah. Yuri said about Poatan. He said I asked him not to use any of his black magic or whatever it was. Yuri's a funny guy. I trained with Yuri all back in the day at All Stars. Great guy. And yeah, that's kind of like Losen. It's like for Keita, he has some sort of magic about him, and it might be that elusive thing that once you get beat, it disappears. I don't know. On a skill set level, having trained with him, he's not basic is the wrong word, because he's not basic, but what he does is pretty basic. Moves very, very well, throws straight punches, doesn't really do anything super like Shamrock will do fancy kicks and teeps and all these fancy jiu-jitsu tricks and climb on people's backs and all that sort of stuff. Losen just stands in there, puts pressure on you and hits you with straight shots and knocks you out. But no one can solve it. No one can fix it. No one can deal with it. So that's why I say he's got some sort of magic. And a great guy as well. He brings a crowd. People love him. Has his own song. He's a real superstar. Both of them are superstars in the making. So when you say like up and comers, they're not really up and comers because everyone knows them, Oktagon especially. But yeah, I like those two. There's a lot of great talent. Obviously, you got, again, it's a champion though, but Will Fleury from Ireland is an individual.
He's fighting for the double champ status soon, isn't he?
Yeah. He's going to fight for the heavyweight title against like I never say his name, Lorenz. I can't remember it anyway. But the guy from Bulgaria, the heavyweight. I'm going to think of it in a sec. But they're fighting for the heavyweight title. He was supposed to fight for it, and it didn't happen, and it fell through. So he'll get his chance. I don't know why I want to say Lorenz Larkin. I know it's not Lorenz Larkin, and I'm stuck on that name, and I can't get his actual name, and it's really annoying me. But yeah, he's a very powerful striker, heavyweight. But for a heavyweight, I think he's 102 kilos. So for Will Fleury, just claiming the light heavyweight title, he's going to go up to heavyweight and fight him. What I say about Will, his nickname is Will fucking Fleury, and Andre Novotny is the only MC to say that name in a fight. He said it in his last fight, which I thought was pretty cool. And I interviewed him for the face-to-face against Carlos. And Fleury is super intelligent, like a very, very intelligent guy when you talk to him, but he looks like a scumbag, right? Dresses like a scumbag, talks like a scumbag. I don't know if it's like his marketing or I don't know. I don't know what it is. But as a fighter, very, very impressive everywhere, especially for a heavier guy. I fought a light heavyweight. I've trained with a lot of light heavyweights. And we all know this. As the weight classes go up, the skill sets normally get worse and power replaces that thing. I feel like Will Fleury used to be a middleweight, has gone up to light heavyweight, now going up to heavyweight. I feel like he has a much bigger skill set than most heavyweights, and he's fun. He's an interesting guy. He loves it. He's putting everything into it. And yeah, like I said, super, super intelligent, super, super nice guy, swears like a madman. And just, obviously he's got that Irish accent, very, very thick Irish accent, and just comes across a bit like rugged and dumb. But he's the complete opposite. He's a very, very smart guy and very analytical. And I think he'll do very, very well in that heavyweight fight. And we'll see where he goes from there. But I would say those three off the top of my head. And again, I haven't slept. Shamrock, Cater, and Fleury are, for me, the three biggest names, especially for the Europeans. You start talking about the Czech, and they have different guys. I like Mazuk as well, who's a Czech, who's going to be in the Tipsport Game Changer, very, very heavy-handed striker. Chepo. I mean, there's so many names, but you should definitely check out an event.
Yeah, they're great choices, and all three have some really good fights coming up this year, so it's going to be very exciting to see. And just finally, looking back at your whole MMA career, just give me some of those greatest memories that you've got.
I mean, getting picked as number one pick on the Helmet Fire by Chael and his team. I thought it was Chael, but it was his team that picked me as number one, like his coaches. So it kind of broke my heart a little bit. But being number one pick on Helmet Fire 17 definitely was a big win for me. Obviously, UFC debut was a huge thing. I won that fight and got my contract. That night, I also won a 25 grand bonus for fight of the season on the Helmet Fire. Back in those days in the UFC, they used to give you checks after your fight. So I got paid 10 and 10 plus 25 grand, right? So $45,000. Before that, I'd been sleeping on the floor, earning £100 a week, pouring my heart and soul into mixed martial arts. I now have $45,000 and I'm in the UFC and I'm in Vegas. We went to, I took Robbie Olivier, who was my head coach for a very, very long time. We took him to go see Ice Baby, Vanilla Ice. And we got to sing on stage with him in Vegas. So that was a good memory for sure. I then went and played craps for the first time in my life, and I won another $7,000. So on that day, it was my 25th birthday, my UFC debut. I made $45,000 plus $7,000 in craps, and I sang Ice Baby with Vanilla Ice on stage. It wasn't a bad day.
That's hard to top, isn't it?
Yeah, so my coach was very happy with that as well. So that would definitely be up there. Fighting the O2, which I think was my third. I know, winning submission of the night or knockout of the night or performance of the night, whatever it was, in Manchester in my second fight against I can't remember his name. I dropped him twice, before I knocked him out, put my hand up and walked off, and he was still alive. And then I had to submit him. Andrew Craig, that was his name. Got 50 grand. That was pretty nice. I remember being at the press conference and Dana going, and bonuses go to, and I just was completely oblivious. And he said my name, and I saw Robbie at the back of the room, and he was like, ugh. And I was like, yeah. So made a nice bit of cash there, and then went out and partied. That was a good night. And then O2, I fought in the O2 in London, which obviously for me is huge. It was a huge moment. I won by first round knockout. And that was like a coming home party. Everything was amazing. Like in London, I'm from Islington originally. So yeah, but that was a big one. Then I left the UFC. Last one would be, you said that it's hard to top that weekend in Vegas. It was, but I fought a guy called, I'm going to say his name's Carlos something, a Polish guy. I fought him 3 times, so I should bloody remember his name. But that's what happened. Zielinski. Carlos Zielinski, or some, because Zielinski is definitely a second name, from Poland. I fought him originally in Australia, and I lost a decision, which was almost as bad as the decision that I lost against Sean Strickland, but not quite as bad. I definitely won the fight. And that was the first time I ever was coached by Carl Prince. So that was a big moment as well. I lost that, and then I demanded a rematch, and I had to have a few fights, and I finally got the rematch against Zielinski in Poland, in Łódź, and my wife was pregnant, and the due date for the baby was the same date as the fight, but we agreed that I could do the fight. I flew to Łódź. I had hate in my heart for Zielinski, for what he'd rubbed from me, what I felt like was robbed for in Australia. The flight home, broken from Australia back to where I live, having lost, was the most miserable 24 hours of my life. Flew home, went to Poland. I knocked him out in 1 minute and 21 seconds. It was sick feeling, probably one of my favorite fights, even though it wasn't one of the bigger ones. Knocked him out. Carl was in my corner. Phil Davis was there. Jack was there, like on my team. Reza was there. All the guys had an amazing, amazing feeling. Rang my wife to tell her that I'd won by knockout. She told me that she was in hospital having a baby, and she was screaming and crying down the phone. And my mood went from here to here very, 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 very quickly. But my flight wasn't until the next day. So I looked at flights home, and unless I'm getting a private jet for $30,000 to get home, I ain't getting home in time for the baby. Won by knockout. I was on a pretty good, feeling good. Me and all the boys went out and had one of the best nights I've ever had in my life, in some terrible, terrible club in Łódź. Like, it was an outdoor club, dancing. It was a great time. Got on the flight home, got in a taxi, got to the hospital, and my baby was born 3 hours later. So my wife was in labor for 3 days, basically, or 2 and a bit days. And then my first daughter was born. So that was a pretty good weekend as well. So they're probably the highlights. I mean, I'm sure I got more. I got plenty of stories, but that was an epic weekend. So yeah, Vegas and my daughter being born off of a revenge knockout was definitely good.
Definitely, the fighting runs in the blood, clearly.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I mean, there's some amazing memories, some great stories. It's been great chatting to you, Luke. Really, really great to have you on the show, sharing all those great stories. Hopefully we'll get to chat to you soon once maybe the GFL matchups have been made and that's been some progression over there. It'd be great to hear about some more about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I appreciate the time, and if we do the GFL, I'll be a bit more analytical, a bit more of a coach, and maybe not talk so much. I'm happy to share, because I really like the concept for GFL, and I think it's getting a bit of bad press for obvious reasons as well. And that's kind of my job to show people what it's really about. And like I said, the system, remember, Sunday, Monday, no competition with any of the bigger promotions. It's not a promotion, it's a league. It's a very, very different system. If it works out or not, who knows, but I'm going to put my best into it. And yeah, I'm happy to break down the fights when they make announcements, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, mate. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.